Hello everyone and welcome to the first game we'll be covering from the Grand Chess Tour currently being played in Zagreb, Croatia. We have 3 days of Rapid and then 2 days of Blitz, and we'll see if anyone else manages to accomplish what Magnus did in 2023 to get a 9 out of 9 or any perfect score on any day. Sorry about the misalignment here. I know that triggers a lot of you. And the first game we're showing, Jan-Krzysztof Duda takes on world classical champion Gukesh Domaraju, even though this is Rapid. And I found it very interesting. This is something they published during the live broadcast. So this is sort of a computer simulation of the chances the players have of winning the tournament, placing Magnus at a staggering 68.2%, then Alireza 11.8, 10.6 for Caruana, then Nodirbek 3.4, Wesley 2.4, Prague 1.6, Duda 1.2, Giri 0.5. What else do you expect? Gukesh 0.3, and Ivan Šarić 0.1. So hard to say, what they based this on. I don't think it means like that Gukesh is expected to do very bad in the tournament, just that there's a very little chance of him getting first place, I imagine. But then again, I have no idea what they meant. Just, a fascinating graphic. Okay. Placing Magnus at however high you want, obviously that's anyone's guess, but yeah, the other stats are just very, very weird. But okay, that's why we love, statistics. So let's check it out. Jan with white opens with pawn to e4. We have pawn to e5, and already surprise right from the start for Gukesh, pawn to d4. The center game, usually followed by the center gambit, and this is, at least for a rapid time format, and maybe even for Blitz and Bullet, a great idea against someone as strong in their opening repertoire as Gukesh is. E captures on d4, and now queen captures on d4. So the center game accepted, and just for fun, I'm going to show you a line that I used to play with both black and white some 10 years ago, because it's a lot of fun, and you could win a lot of easy games with this. For example, c3, d captures, you play bishop c4, give up with the b2 pawn as well, and okay, now you give up some material, and you have the bishop pair already, ready to rumble. And here, pawn to d5. Very tricky move that you have to be, aware that it exists, because after bishop captures, your opponent will play knight to f6, or you can play it if you're playing with black, and bishop captures on f7, which wins the black queen. But now bishop to b4 check wins the white queen as well. And a lot of players playing this with the white pieces just defend with bishop c3 or knight d2, and then you can just capture it and then pick up the white queen. The only move that keeps the game intact for white is to bring the queen back to d2 and defend with the queen, and now you can capture and play pretty much whatever you want. For example, rook to e8 attacks the pawn, f3, and so on. But it's a really cool line to play for both white and black. So if someone plays this against you, you should be ready with this d5 line. But here, queen captures on d4. This is at this level, of course, everyone will play the best move. Knight to c6 attacks the queen, queen to e3, and knight to f6. You can see that both of them are blitzing out moves without any wasting of time, or rather you would be able to if I actually allowed the clock times on the interface, which I will do presently. There we go, clock times enabled, and there we go. Last video, we had that game when I didn't have the clock time, so that's the reason. But yeah, 25 minutes for both, and also it is a rapid game, so we're gonna remove that C. Sorry about that. Happens, sometimes it happens when I cover the first game in an event. I mostly cover everything, but sometimes I miss it. So knight to f6, we have knight to c3, and bishop to b4. Okay, still everything, by theory, this is the Paulsen variation of the Berger variation. Bishop to d2 and castles king side, castles queen side, and rook to e8. And again, there are many games in the database featuring these exact same lines, but queen to g3 is the move that white always plays here. Or rather, there are most games in the database with queen to g3. There are only a handful of queen to f4, and obviously Duda did a lot of work on this line, as look at this, queen to f4. And the reason why queen g3 was played is that after you give up d4 pawn, let's say captures and captures, rook captures on e4, bishop captures on b4, you can play rook captures on b4, and it's a very, very, very tricky line. You will kick away the rook, black will push the d pawn, you will try to develop your king side. All in all, like in all of these lines where white gives up a pawn or two, black shouldn't really have any problems, but black has to know what black is doing. But here, queen to f4, the top move recommended by the engine, now makes Gukesh think a little. And what you can do here actually is just play bishop captures on c3. And after bishop captures, rook captures on e4, you attack the queen, and once the queen moves, you can go rook e6 to defend your knight, and then just, play d5. You already have very nice support for d4. Definitely the way to go. Gukesh played pawn to d6, and as you can see, this is the first move where he actually spent time, so he was unaware of this queen to f4, let's call it novelty, even though it's actually not. Well, the move is deemed an inaccuracy. So here, pawn to f3, we have bishop to e6 by Gukesh and pawn to g4 by Duda. Now, there are a couple of games that reach this position. For example, g4 is a move Judith Polgar played against Rustam Kasimdzhanov in 2002 FIDE Grand Prix, and she lost the game. There's nothing wrong with the move. She just lost the game, and Kasimdzhanov went for knight to d7. But here we have knight to e5, pawn to h4, and now knight f to d7, and it is now as of move 11 that we have a completely new game. So, okay, Duda strikes with pawn to g5, we have knight to b6, pawn to h5, going after Gukesh's king, knight e to c4. Putting pressure on the white king, also on that bishop on d2, bishop captures on c4, we have knight captures, and now knight g to e2, pawn to c6, Gukesh still has quite a few moves before he starts his expansion on the queen side, and pawn to h6. Duda already reaches the black king. We have pawn to g6, and not just pawn to a3, challenging the bishop, and if you lose control of this diagonal and allow this bishop to sort of park on c3, it's not going to be, the best for you. So Gukesh finds knight captures on a3, and it's a very nice move that cannot be refuted by actually capturing the knight, because if you capture just king b1, and that's it, you're getting checkmated. So that will not work for Jan-Krzysztof. He goes knight to a4, opens up an attack on the bishop, and now basically Gukesh achieves what he hoped for. That bishop will never gain control of this diagonal, and he plays bishop captures on d2. The problem with a move like, let's say, queen to a5 is that after you captures, the bishop will capture on a3, and there's nothing. If b5, trying for b4, the attack is just over, and you're getting checkmated. So you have to trade. Bishop captures on d2. We have queen captures on d2, and now knight back to b5. We have rook h to g1. Of course, we all know what this means. The rook is nicely aligned with the king. f4, f5 is coming. So pawn to f6 by Gukesh, and pawn to f4. And what you should do here is capture on g5 and hope that f5, it doesn't lose on the spot. It doesn't, but it's still very, very hard to handle. In the game, Gukesh closed the position with pawn to f5, but now comes knight to d4, putting pressure on the bishop, and on f5. F captures on e4, and now knight captures on b5. C captures and knight to c3, gaining control over that d5 square. So even though you don't want to play it, or rather, you shouldn't play it, you kind of have to play it. Rook to c8 is a better try, but Gukesh played pawn to d5, which definitely makes sense. You gain control over that d5 pawn, more or less, as of course, you're not expecting knight captures on d5. That would just be silly. You're hoping that it holds and you're not losing at the spot, but you are, and it's not that easy to spot why. So have at it. What would you play here while I give you a couple of seconds? So the only move that wins here is pawn to f5. The other move that sort of wins is what Duda played, but still very, very hard to refute in actual practice. I'm just going to show you why f5 is so crazy, because after g captures on f5, queen d4 is now unstoppable. You're threatening checkmate on g7, and once you prevent this, queen to c7, g6. And that's it. There's no defending this. The queen cuts off this diagonal. The rook will open up the path towards the black king. You don't really have any options here. For example, whatever you play, you just play captures, captures, and rook g7 check, and then you get either checkmated on g7 or you capture, and then of course the rook is coming to h1. So after d5, Duda played queen to d4 first, and now queen to c7. A tougher defense would have been queen to e7, but after queen to c7, we basically go into the same line, only Gukesh defended a little bit differently. After Duda's pawn to f5, Gukesh played bishop captures on f5, which does not open up the g file, but you leave the d5 pawn undefended, and look at this f6 square. We all know what's coming to f6. Knight captures on d5 with tempo, so knight f6 will win you at least the exchange, if not worse. Queen to e5 offering a queen trade, and now knight to f6 with check. King f7, and now just knight captures on e8, happily offering a trade as the endgame is winning. Okay, queen captures on d4. We have first knight. You could capture the queen. For some reason, Duda went for knight to d6 as he wanted his rook on d6. Obviously, captures. We have rook to c8, putting pressure on that c2 pawn, so maybe e3 and the bishop opens up. Something good might happen, as, objectively you're just down the exchange. So rook to g3, inviting this pawn to e3 move, but it wouldn't really do all that much. If you play pawn to e3, then rook f6 check. Now, if you go to the e file, you pick it up with check, which is not great. And if you go to g8, then your king is just, in a terrible position. You can even allow this king d1. Now you're threatening checkmate, so the black rook would have to go all the way. Then you grab the 7th rank, and that's it. That will be at the end of the black king. So after rook g3, king to e7 was played, rook to d5, and now pawn to a6, defending on b5. Rook to c3, offering a rook trade, which Gukesh, of course, would not accept, but he has to. If he allows rook c7, then again his position falls apart. So he trades, captures, ruins Duda's pawn structure a little bit, and king to e6. We have rook to c5, bishop to g4, and rook to c7. So you will not be able to defend the pawns. King to f5, going after the pawns on dark squares. Rook captures, we have king captures, and king to d2. King to h5, and now king to e3. So first, improve the position of your king before you start gobbling up the pawns on the queen side. We have bishop to f5, rook captures on b7, king captures on h6, and rook to b6, of course, going after the other queen side pawns. King h5, rook captures on a6, pawn to g5. Now Gukesh will try advancing his passed pawn to victory. We'll see how it goes. Rook b6, we have bishop to d7, king captures on e4, and now king to h4. We have king to f3, bishop to g4 with check, king to f2, and now bishop back to d7. Defending on b5, rook to d6, going after the bishop, bishop to e8, and now pawn to c4. Eliminating the pawn, so you're going to give up one pawn in order to pick it up with check because it's safe on b5, and then you're going to escort the c pawn up the board. No way to avoid this. We have captures, check, king comes, or rather pawn to g4 blocking, and the rook captures on c4. Bishop to g6, putting pressure on c2, but now all that's left is to advance the pawn to a dark square, move the rook, put the rook behind the pawn, obviously not on c2 if the bishop is there, and then advance the pawn. So can Gukesh do something about this? Well, he is the world champion. He will think of something. King to g2, we have bishop to f5. We have pawn to c3. King g5, we have king to g3. It's on the king is on a dark square, so not much for Gukesh to do here. Bishop e6, we have rook to f4 and bishop to f5. We have pawn to c4. King to f6 now. He says, all right, my bishop will guard the pawn, and my king will stop the pawn marching on the c file. c5, we have king to e6. And if you're thinking about captures, and this, it's not enough. The king is still within the square of the pawn. So after this, we have pawn to c6, make the pawn move one step further before deciding to capture on f5. But now bishop to g6. And I think bishop to g6 was more than just a way to drag the game on. I think he was actually hoping for a silly move from Duda, which is possible. Who wouldn't try rook to f6 check? Because sometimes your brain can play tricks on you. But if the king moves, then the light squares open up, and then the bishop is the one that stops the pawn. So it's a silly thing to do, but you always have to try absolutely everything. when playing chess. That's just how it works. Rook to c4 was played, and he was in this position on move 59 that Jan-Krzysztof Duda won the game, or rather that Gukesh Domarajo resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Reason for that is that after the king approaches the pawn, you will play pawn to c7, and that's it. The king cannot stop the pawn. If bishop f5, you will simply queen the pawn, capture the bishop, and that's it. So yeah, what can we say about this game? Beautifully played by Duda. He completely out-prepared Gukesh. Played the center game. I mean, who does that? We used to play that for fun. Now I think I played it maybe once in a serious game, and depending the level that I'm at, it's not that weird. But having it played on this level, yeah, definitely shows that people would rather play perhaps a lesser opening against a strong opponent like Gukesh than, just go for the top moves that you absolutely know that Gukesh is prepared for. So here Gukesh threw him off guard very early on. He started burning time, and that was enough to, get him uncomfortable and to, get him to start making mistakes. And if you, take that into consideration, maybe the computers weren't that crazy when making this assumption, but still, I mean, putting Gukesh at 0.3, I don't think anyone's buying that. So yeah, that's the game. I hope you guys enjoyed the first of many that we'll cover for the Grandchester Rapid and Blitz tournament being played in Zagreb, Croatia. I would like to thank Andrej Schrade, Johan Kron, James Anderson, Guillermo Ismael Garcia Borges, and Phil Bauer for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.